Lavano Comenencia had just scored the greatest goal of his life. Curaçao, the smallest nation by population ever to qualify for a World Cup. 1-1 against Germany, four-time world champions. In Houston, in front of the watching world. For 30 seconds, it looked like the kind of moment football exists to produce. The underdog goal, the impossible equalizer. The small nation standing toe-to-toe with one of the giants of the game. Crowd on their feet, players in disbelief, a story beginning to write itself in real time. Then the whistle blew. Not for a foul, not for an offside. The clock had reached the 22nd minute, and the referees stopped the match so both teams could have a drink of water. Curaçao never recovered. Germany scored twice before halftime. The final score was 7-1. A potential giant killing, snuffed out not by a great save or a tactical masterstroke, but by 3 minutes of enforced stillness at the exact moment momentum had shifted. Former England striker Alan Shearer said what millions watching were thinking. I actually felt sorry for them. They scored, and then it was maybe 30 seconds after that it stopped. So it killed their momentum. Killed. Not interrupted, not delayed. Killed. And that single word, from one of England's greatest ever forwards, describing what happened to the smallest nation at this World Cup in the space of 3 minutes, is the word that has followed FIFA's mandatory hydration break, from stadium to stadium, press conference to press conference, podcast to podcast, across the first 10 days of the 2026 World Cup. Because what happened to Curaçao against Germany was not an isolated incident. It was not bad luck. It was the rule working exactly as designed. And the coaches, players, and football people who have watched it work across match after match at this tournament are arriving, independently, at the same uncomfortable conclusion. Football has changed, and the change was not an accident. To understand what FIFA actually built here, you have to go back further than the tournament itself. The stated reason for the hydration breaks was heat. The 2025 Club World Cup, also held in the United States, produced genuinely alarming scenes. Temperatures in some venues reached 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Players reported dizziness. Medical staff raised serious concerns. There was a legitimate case for some form of intervention. FIFA announced the policy in December 2025. 2 mandatory 3-minute hydration breaks per match, one in each half, at the 22nd minute mark. Non-negotiable, universal, every match, every stadium, every city, regardless of conditions. That last part, regardless of conditions, is the sentence everything that followed was built on. Because here is what Ghana versus Panama looked like on a Wednesday afternoon in Toronto. Rainy skies, 66 degrees Fahrenheit, players in full kit, not breaking visible sweat. And at the 22nd minute, the referee's whistle. Both teams walking to the sideline for 3 minutes of mandatory hydration. In Toronto, in the rain, at 66 degrees. Spain against Cape Verde was played inside a fully domed, climate-controlled stadium in Atlanta. Temperature inside the building was controlled. No heat, no humidity, no physical risk to any player. At the 22nd minute, the whistle. Panama's coach Thomas Christensen said afterward what many in the stadium were already feeling. The weather conditions, he said. It was not hot, but we have to accept it. And then he said the sentence that told the full story. Everything advertised on the television is what is paying for all these things, and we have to agree on that. A head coach at a World Cup press conference connecting mandatory hydration breaks directly to television advertising revenue, in public, on the record. He is not the only one. FIFA's announcement of the hydration breaks was not made at a public press conference. It was made at the World Broadcaster meeting in Washington, in a room full of the people who buy the rights to televise football's biggest tournament. The governing body's chief tournament officer noted specifically that the breaks would make the match schedule more predictable for broadcasters. More predictable for broadcasters, at a meeting with broadcasters, before the public announcement was made. And when the tournament began, Fox Sports, the primary American broadcaster, immediately went to full commercial breaks during every hydration stoppage. Powerade, a FIFA commercial partner, had been given sponsorship rights to the breaks themselves before a single match had been played. The stoppages were branded, named, monetized before kickoff. Marcelo Bielsa saw it immediately. The Uruguay head coach, one of the most respected and most principled football minds alive, stood in front of reporters on June 21st and said something that no amount of official positioning has been able to answer since. When the match was split into 4 parts, football was not what they were thinking about. They were thinking about other repercussions. Other repercussions, said by Bielsa. A man not known for political language or corporate accommodation. A man who turned down a £5 million bonus from the English Football Association rather than compromise his standards. A man who, when he criticizes something publicly, means every word. Playing 4 times instead of 2 alters the conception of what had been culturally built to interpret football, he said. This change of culture does not add anything and takes away a lot. I will just say that before this decision, football had a characteristic. Now it has another. And then he added something that separated his statement from everything else said about this rule at the tournament. The conclusions I am making here are not really my own, he said. I also echo what I hear as well. A 70-year-old coach saying publicly that he is reflecting a view he hears repeatedly from within the sport. Not just his opinion, the opinion being shared, out of public earshot, by people inside football who have reached the same conclusion but are less willing to say it on camera. He was not alone in saying it. Mauricio Pochettino, head coach of the United States, went viral before the tournament for the image of his players gathered around a laptop during a hydration break in a pre-tournament friendly against Senegal. The clip spread everywhere. A World Cup coach turning a drinks break into a tactical presentation in the style of a basketball timeout. Pochettino didn't apologize for it. He adapted to it. But when asked about the breaks in honest terms, Pochettino said exactly what he thought. I don't like it. I only like it when the conditions are extreme. When the conditions are good, it is unnecessary. I do not like it. From the coach of the host nation, said openly, in press conferences, to journalists, at his own World Cup. Ståle Solbakken of Norway added the detail that revealed how deeply the breaks were reshaping coaching decisions beyond the match itself. He said the second half break, which begins at the 67th minute, was directly affecting his substitution planning. Many coaches tend to make second half changes between the 60th and 70th minute, he explained. The hydration break sits in the middle of that window, which means substitution decisions, one of the most consequential tactical tools a manager has, are now being planned around a mandatory commercial stoppage rather than around the needs of the match. The game is being managed around the break, not the break being managed around the game. Solbakken said he understood the rule in extreme heat. In Greensboro, where temperatures hit 35 degrees during Norway's training camp, he had no problem with players drinking water. But he said it plainly. In cooler conditions during matches, he did not like it. He thought it was unnecessary. But the rule was universal, and so he adapted. All that is good is to speed up the game, he said, but the other things slow down the game. So it speaks against itself. Didier Deschamps of France was more diplomatic in tone, but identical in substance. He acknowledged the breaks give coaches valuable time to deliver tactical instructions. He noted, with the resigned pragmatism of a manager who has prepared everything he can around a constraint he cannot change, that his staff had anticipated the 4-quarter structure in their pre-tournament preparation. But then he said the sentence that became the most quoted coaching verdict on the rule. It's not 2 half-times, it is 4-quarter times. This is the new reality. 4-quarter times, from the head coach of the world's top-ranked nation. Describing football at the 2026 World Cup, not as football, but as something else. Something that now shares the structural rhythm of a different sport from a different country. Spain's Luis de la Fuente was perhaps the most measured voice in the debate, which is why his words landed with particular force. He did not reject the concept entirely. He acknowledged that in extreme heat, at outdoor venues in Kansas City or Seattle on afternoon kickoffs, the break serves a genuine purpose. Players have welcomed it in those conditions, he said, and he believed them. But he said the rest out loud. Tomorrow, with the temperatures we will have in this stadium, maybe these breaks are not so needed. But we need to abide by the rules. We need to abide by the rules. From the head coach of the European champions. In an air-conditioned stadium in Atlanta, where the temperature is controlled, where the weather is irrelevant, where every condition that justified the rule is absent, and the whistle still blows at the 22nd minute. Roy Keane, speaking on the Overlap podcast he co-hosts with Gary Neville, said what many former players were saying in less public settings. So it's like, it is a timeout, he said. We love football because of the pace of the game. What it's doing is stopping the flow of the game. The momentum. Ronald Koeman of the Netherlands said his team had discussed specifically how to exploit the break, telling reporters they planned to use it as a tactical window, in different ways to their advantage. Which is precisely the problem buried inside the solution. A welfare measure, applied universally, has become a tactical resource. The team best at using the 3-minute window is gaining an advantage that has nothing to do with their physical or technical ability. It has to do with how quickly their coach can gather the group, deliver information, and reset the team's structure in under 3 minutes. It is an advantage that no previous generation of football coaching ever had. And it arrived not through a change to the laws of the game, but through a welfare policy applied at a commercial meeting in Washington. The data is building. 8 of the first 16 matches at the tournament produced goals within 10 minutes of a hydration break. Momentum maps, tracked independently by broadcast analysts and sports data companies, show measurable shifts in the pattern of play after every stoppage. Curaçao against Germany is the starkest example. But Morocco against Brazil told the same story from the other direction. Morocco had dominated the opening of that match, scored before the first half break, and then watched Vinicius Jr. equalize less than 10 minutes after play resumed. Carlo Ancelotti acknowledged it openly afterward, saying the break allowed him to deliver fresh instructions that changed his team's approach. The break produced the equalizer. Not football, not tactics applied over 90 minutes. 3 minutes of enforced stillness. Canada against Bosnia told the same story in the opposite direction. Bosnia's opening goal was followed almost immediately by a first-half break. Their shots in the remainder of the half went from 1 to 5. Their touches in the opposition box went from 4 to 15. Before the break, Bosnia had the advantage. After the break, Canada had it. The hydration stoppage did not simply interrupt the match, it reset it. And in the stands, the fans who have traveled thousands of miles to be inside these stadiums during those resets are not hiding their feelings about it. There were boos in Foxborough when the break came in Norway versus Iraq. There were boos in Dallas during England versus Croatia, where the air-conditioned AT&T Stadium rendered the welfare justification invisible to everyone in attendance. A fan interviewed outside that match said something that captured the reaction of large sections of both sets of supporters. "It is like the Americanization of football," he said. "That is exactly what it feels like." Another said what Bielsa and Solbakken and Keane were all saying in more measured language. "It stops the flow." Football is about the flow. And the flow is the thing that has defined the sport for over a century. The 90 minutes of uninterrupted movement, tension, and consequence that make football different from every other sport on earth. The absence of timeouts, the absence of commercial pauses, the absence of enforced breaks that allow coaches, commentators, and advertisers to catch their breath while the game waits. That absence is what people around the world built their relationship with football around, and FIFA has ended it. Not at the European Championship, not in the Premier League or La Liga, at the World Cup. The biggest stage the sport has, in front of the largest global audience football produces. Panama's coach said everything advertised on television is what pays for all these things. Bielsa said football was not what they were thinking about. Solbakken said it was unnecessary. De La Fuente said maybe these breaks are not so needed. Pochettino said he doesn't like it. Deschamps said it is 4 quarter times now. Keane said it stops the flow. And 60,000 people in an air-conditioned building in Dallas booed. FIFA's response to all of it has been the response it always gives. The policy was introduced to protect player welfare. The policy was announced in advance. The policy will be reviewed after the tournament. Comments have been noted. The process continues. And at the 22nd minute of every match, regardless of temperature, regardless of location, regardless of what is happening on the pitch, the whistle blows. The question the football world is now asking is not whether this World Cup's hydration breaks are a problem. The question is what comes after. Because the English Football Association has already said it is unlikely to implement the breaks at the 2028 European Championship, hosted by the United Kingdom and Ireland. Which means the rule FIFA introduced at the biggest tournament in the world is already being described by one of the sport's most powerful federations as a World Cup-specific measure that does not represent the future of the game. Unless it does. Because if the breaks generate the commercial revenue FIFA's broadcast partners are expecting, if the data shows that the additional advertising slots improve the tournament's financial return, and if sponsors begin to price the existence of those slots into future deals, then the incentive to make the change permanent becomes one that FIFA's financial architecture will find very difficult to reverse. Bielsa said football has a characteristic, and now it has another. What he did not say, what nobody has yet said publicly, is whether the new characteristic is temporary or whether it is the beginning of something football cannot come back from. The whistle keeps blowing, Fox keeps cutting to commercials. The goals keep coming in the 10 minutes after the restart, and the coaches who have managed football at the highest level for decades keep sitting in press conferences, choosing their words carefully, saying what they actually think in language diplomatic enough not to get them sanctioned. 4 quarter times. That is the new reality. The question is whose reality it was designed to be. Is the hydration break a legitimate welfare measure being unfairly criticized? Or has FIFA changed the sport for commercial reasons and used player safety as the justification? And if the data shows the breaks are shifting outcomes match after match, At what point does a welfare policy become a competitive variable that nobody agreed to? Leave it in the comments. These are the conversations this channel exists for.